I was washing the breakfast dishes when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was just another notification, a bank alert, a random email. But as I wiped my hands and picked up my phone, the words on the screen made my breath hitch. I can't do this anymore, Jessica. I need a real partner, not a worthless, lazy burden. I'm filing for divorce. Don't bother calling me. I've already made up my mind. A worthless, lazy burden. I stared at the message, my heart pounding, but not in the way he probably imagined. I wasn't devastated. I wasn't even surprised. I was just disgusted. Nathan had been growing more resentful for months, ever since I stepped back from my work life to recover from stress-related health issues. He hated the idea of being the sole provider, even though we had more than enough, even though he never had to worry about money. And yet, here he was, treating me like dead weight, like a failure. What he didn't know, what he had never bothered to find out, was that I wasn't some helpless, unemployed wife living off his salary. The company he prided himself on working for, the one he spent years climbing the corporate ladder in, it was mine. But Nathan never paid attention to details that didn't revolve around him. He assumed that because I wasn't getting up every morning to go to an office like him, I was doing nothing. Fine, let him think that. I set my phone down, finishing the dishes with a steady hand. If Nathan was expecting me to beg, cry, or panic over what I'd do without him, he was in for a surprise. Because tomorrow I wouldn't just be his soon-to-be ex-wife. Tomorrow I'd be his boss. Nathan came home late as usual. He didn't greet me, didn't even look in my direction. Instead, he tossed his keys on the counter and muttered, "I assume you got my text." I wiped my hands on a towel, watching him carefully. His tie was loose, his shirt wrinkled from a long day. He probably thought he looked powerful, like a man who had made a firm decision and was sticking to it. I nodded. I did. Nathan's eyes flickered to me, clearly expecting an outburst, a fight, maybe even tears. Instead, I just held his gaze, calm and composed. "And?" he asked, impatience creeping into his voice. "And what?" I countered. "You made your choice. What else is there to say?" For the first time, I saw hesitation in his expression. His brow furrowed, like he wasn't sure whether to feel victorious or disappointed. This wasn't the reaction he expected. But he covered it quickly with a smug smirk. "Figures. You never had much to say. Just coasting through life, letting me handle everything while you sit at home." Ah, there it was. The final insult. Nathan had no idea what was coming. I exhaled slowly, pretending to be unbothered. "Well, I guess you'll be free soon then." He laughed under his breath, shaking his head. "Finally, I can actually have a real future. Someone who doesn't drain me." I gave him a small smile. "You should get some rest. You have a big day at work tomorrow." And so did I. Nathan left for work early, whistling as he walked out the door. He had no idea that I'd be in the same building within the hour, just in a much higher office. I had been hands-off with the company for the past year, but now I had every intention of making my presence known. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in my executive office reviewing reports when my assistant knocked. "Jessica, the employee termination list is ready for review." I took the folder from her, flipping through the names. I already knew which one mattered most. And there it was. Nathan Reynolds, Department Head, Sales Division. It was time. I clicked the intercom, my voice steady and firm. "Send him in." Nathan strolled into the office, completely oblivious. He had no idea he was walking into his own demise. The arrogance was practically dripping off him as he adjusted his tie and greeted the receptionist with his usual fake charm. He thought this was just another day at work. Another day of barking orders, taking credit for his team's achievements, and boasting about how essential he was to the company. And why wouldn't he? He had spent years climbing the ranks, believing he was untouchable. That without him, the company would crumble. He had no clue that his entire career rested in my hands. The receptionist gave him a tight smile. "Jessica will see you now." Nathan frowned. Jessica? Yes. She motioned toward my office door. The confusion on his face was delicious. I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to piece together why his lazy, worthless wife, was sitting behind a desk in a company he thought he owned through sheer force of ego. He stepped inside, his expression shifting from confusion to pure disbelief. I leaned back in my chair, meeting his gaze with unwavering calm. Good morning, Nathan. For a second, he just stood there, silent, like his brain refused to process what was happening. What the hell is this? He finally demanded, closing the door behind him. I gestured toward the chair across from me. Have a seat. His mouth opened, then closed again. He hesitated, just for a moment. But his pride forced him to move forward. He sank into the chair, arms crossed. What is this, Jessica? Why are you here? I folded my hands neatly on my desk. I own this company. His scoff was immediate. No, you don't. I smiled. Yes, I do. His lips curled into a sneer. You expect me to believe that? You don't even have a job, Jessica. You've been sitting at home living off my paycheck for years. I tilted my head slightly. Your paycheck? The one I sign? Nathan flinched. Just barely. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. You're lying, he snapped. I slid a folder across the desk. Inside were the official ownership documents. My name, my title, my control over every department, including his. Nathan's fingers twitched as he opened it. His eyes darted over the paperwork, scanning every line. His breathing changed, becoming shallower. The realization was sinking in. Everything he thought he knew, every assumption he had made about his success, his position, his power, had been built on a lie. A lie he had told himself. He looked up, his face pale. This isn't possible. You're telling me you've owned this company the whole time? Yes. You let me... He stopped, clenching his jaw. Yes, Nathan. I let you believe whatever you wanted to believe. Silence. For the first time, Nathan had no comeback. But then, like clockwork, his ego tried to regain control. He scoffed again, leaning back like he wasn't fazed. So what? You dragged me in here just to flex your power? To show off? Pathetic. I exhaled softly, feigning disappointment. No, Nathan. I called you in here because of this. I pulled another folder from my desk. Inside was his termination letter. His eyes darted over the page. He blinked once, twice, then again. The muscles in his jaw tensed. You're firing me? I kept my voice steady. Yes. The shock hit him like a slap. You can't do that. I can. And I am. His nostrils flared. On what grounds? You have no reason to fire me. I arched an eyebrow. No reason? I flipped through the file, reading out loud. Multiple complaints from employees about workplace toxicity, failure to meet performance targets for the last 3 quarters, reports of inappropriate remarks toward female colleagues. Nathan's face darkened. I continued. Oh, and let's not forget your most recent disrespectful behavior toward the company's owner. That alone is grounds for termination. He was seething. This is personal. You're using our divorce to get back at me. I smiled. Oh no, Nathan. This is professional. I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. But let's not pretend it doesn't feel damn good. His fists clenched. You'll regret this. I shrugged. Doubt it. I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. Security will escort you out. Nathan's face was red with rage. He started to say something else, some last desperate attempt to salvage his pride. But security was already at the door. He had no choice. With one last glare, he walked out of the office he would never step into again. And just like that, I fired my own husband. But the real fireworks wouldn't start until tomorrow, because he had no idea what else was coming. Nathan was gone. Escorted out of the building by security, humiliated, furious, but still clueless about how much worse things were going to get. I expected him to show up at home that night, maybe throw a fit, demand an explanation. But instead, my phone buzzed with a single text from him. "You think this is over? I'll take half of everything in the divorce. You'll regret this." I smirked. Oh, Nathan, if only you knew I didn't respond. Let him stew in his own delusions for a little longer. Tomorrow, reality would hit him like a freight train. I arrived at the office at 8 a.m. sharp. There was already a buzz in the building. Nathan's termination had spread fast. Employees who had suffered under his arrogance, his condescension, his fake leadership, they were relieved. Some even celebrated. And then, at exactly 8:17 a.m., my assistant knocked on the door. "Jessica, we just got a call from the legal department. Nathan is trying to file a wrongful termination lawsuit." I let out a small laugh. Predictable. I leaned back in my chair. And? They're not worried. He doesn't have a case. We have extensive documentation on his performance issues, complaints from staff, and financial mismanagement in his department. He has no legal standing. Of course he didn't. Nathan thought power came from bluffing, from bullying his way through situations. But power? Real power? That came from being prepared. "Let the lawyers handle it," I said calmly. "But send me any new developments." She nodded and left. I was almost looking forward to the moment when Nathan realized that this wasn't a game, that he wasn't dealing with the passive, obedient wife he had convinced himself I was. But the real storm? That hit around noon. At exactly 12:03 p.m., my assistant rushed into my office, eyes wide. "You need to see this," she said, holding up her phone. I took it from her, scanning the company-wide email that had just gone out. It was from HR. Subject, immediate announcement regarding Nathan Reynolds. "Dear team, as of today, Nathan Reynolds is no longer employed at our company. Additionally, an internal review has revealed concerning financial activity under his department, including unauthorized budget allocations and misuse of company funds. A formal investigation is underway. We encourage any employees with additional information to come forward. Sincerely, HR Department." I let out a low whistle. That was fast. My assistant gave me a knowing look. I think HR has been waiting to get rid of him for a while. I had no doubt. Nathan had spent years believing he was untouchable, that his charm and smooth talking could cover up his incompetence. But the truth always has a way of coming out. And now? The walls were closing in. At that moment, my phone buzzed. "Nathan," I let it ring. Then another text came through. "What did you do?" I smiled, but before I could even put my phone down, another message popped up. This time, from an unknown number. I opened it. "Jessica, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to work under Nathan. I thought you should know. He's been taking credit for other people's work for years. And there's more. I have proof." I sat up straighter. "Proof?" I quickly typed back. "Tell me everything." 30 minutes later, I sat across from Ben, a former employee who had left the company 6 months ago. I remembered him now. Smart, hardworking, but mysteriously resigned despite being up for a promotion. And now, I knew why. "Nathan sabotaged me," Ben said bitterly. "I had a project, one I worked on for months. At the last second, he took credit for it, changed the name on the final proposal, and made sure I was reassigned before I could fight back." My stomach twisted. "That's worse than I thought." Ben clenched his jaw. "I have emails, screenshots. I kept records, just in case I ever needed to prove what happened." I exhaled slowly. Nathan hadn't just been incompetent. He had actively destroyed other people's careers to prop up his own. And now, he was going to pay for it. At exactly 6:45 p.m., Nathan stormed into our house. Or rather, my house. The minute he slammed the door behind him, I looked up from my glass of wine. He was furious. "What the hell is going on, Jessica?" he barked. "HR is investigating me? People are talking about fraud. This is a damn witch hunt." I took a slow sip of my wine, completely unfazed. "You mean an investigation? Into your misconduct?" Nathan's face turned red. "You did this. You set me up." I set my glass down. "No, Nathan. You set yourself up. You just never thought anyone would call you out." He ran a hand through his hair, his confidence cracking. "This isn't happening. This can't be happening." I stood, looking him dead in the eye. "Oh, it's happening. And it's only going to get worse for you from here." His breath hitched. He knew I wasn't bluffing. And then, just when I thought the night couldn't get any better, my lawyer called. I picked up the phone, keeping my eyes locked on Nathan's. "Good timing," I said smoothly. "We were just discussing his future." Nathan swallowed hard, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't the one in control. And the best part? I wasn't even close to being finished with him. Nathan was unraveling. His whole life had been built on arrogance, on the belief that he was always one step ahead, always in control. But now he was standing in my living room, his face twisted in disbelief as he listened to my one-sided phone conversation with my lawyer. I ended the call with a satisfied hum and placed my phone on the counter. Then I turned to him, arms crossed, perfectly calm. "Jessica," he said, his voice low, strained. "Tell me this is all some kind of joke." I tilted my head slightly. "Which part? The fraud investigation? The fact that you're unemployed? The reality that you have no case against me? You'll have to be more specific." Nathan's fists clenched at his sides. "You own the company I worked for? How the hell did that happen? You don't even have a background in business." I laughed softly. "That's the funny part, Nathan. I do. You just never cared to ask." He scoffed. "Bullshit." "Sit down," I said, my voice suddenly sharp. "Let me explain how blind you've been." Nathan hesitated. I could see the battle in his head. His pride telling him not to obey me, but his desperation forcing him to listen. Finally, he sank onto the couch, arms crossed tightly. I sat across from him, enjoying every second of his unraveling world. "You remember my father's company, don't you?" I asked, watching his reaction carefully. His brows furrowed. "Your dad owned a software company or something, right? But he sold it." I smiled. "Wrong. He never sold it. He stepped down as CEO when his health declined, but instead of selling it off to some investor, he left it to me." Nathan's mouth opened slightly before snapping shut. I continued. "Of course, back then I wasn't ready to take over. I was still in my 20s, fresh out of college. So I hired a management team to run it while I learned everything I could about the business world. I studied quietly, watched from the sidelines, and when I was ready, I leaned forward slightly. I took over." Nathan shook his head, his expression caught between shock and denial. "Number no way. If you ran the company, I would have known. I worked there for 6 years. There's no way you were the owner." I let out a small laugh. "Nathan, do you even know the name of the parent company that owns the firm you worked for?" His face twitched. He didn't know. I knew it. He never cared about anything beyond his own title, his own position. He'd spent years working for my company without once looking past his own little bubble. "It's called Vanguard Holdings," I said smoothly. "My father restructured the business years ago. The company you worked for? It was a subsidiary under the Vanguard umbrella. And guess who the CEO of Vanguard Holdings is?" Nathan's breathing turned shallow. I leaned back, crossing my legs. "Me." Silence. The look on his face? Priceless. He was trying to process everything at once. The fact that he had spent years working under his own wife. That every time he came home complaining about upper management, he had actually been complaining about me. And the worst part? I never hid it from him. You never, he swallowed. You never told me. I arched an eyebrow. I never hid it, Nathan. You never asked. You assumed I was just some clueless housewife sitting at home waiting for you to bring money in. But the truth? The truth is that you never saw me as an equal. You thought you were the provider, that you were the man of the house. You thought your career was the only one that mattered. His jaw clenched. You let me look like a damn idiot. I laughed, shaking my head. No, Nathan, you did that to yourself. You spent years dismissing my interests, brushing off my work, never once asking what I did all day. I never needed to keep a secret from you. You just never listened. His face had gone pale. Everything he believed about his success, his authority, it was all built on a lie. A lie he told himself. I stood up, towering over him now. And the best part? Even if I had told you, it wouldn't have changed anything. Because you would have done what you always do. Underestimate me. Nathan was silent, his face a war zone of emotions. Anger, disbelief, regret, fear. And I wasn't even done. I reached for another folder sitting on the counter and tossed it onto the coffee table in front of him. And this? This is your severance package. His eyes darted to the folder. It includes your final paycheck. A very small sum compared to what you were expecting. And before you start whining, let me remind you, you were terminated for cause. That means no benefits, no bonuses, no glowing recommendations. Nathan's fingers twitched. He looked like he wanted to rip something apart. But I wasn't finished. And as for our divorce, you can forget about taking half of anything. My lawyer has already started the proceedings. And since our prenup clearly states that separate assets remain separate, you won't be touching a single cent of my company's money. Nathan's mouth opened, ready to argue, ready to fight. But then, I dropped the final bombshell. Oh, and one more thing, I said casually, reaching for my phone. I turned the screen toward him. It was an email from HR, a permanent blacklist notice. As of this morning, I said, you've been banned from working at any company affiliated with Vanguard Holdings. Nathan's breath hitched. Which means, I added, enjoying every second of this, you won't be getting another job in your industry. Not in this city. Not in this entire state. A silence stretched between us. A delicious silence. Nathan, for the first time in his life, was completely powerless. And I had never felt more powerful. Nathan sat there, stunned, his jaw clenched so tight I thought he might shatter a tooth. He had nothing left. No job, no leverage, no financial claim over me. And thanks to the blacklist, no future in the industry he had once considered his kingdom. For the first time in his life, he wasn't in control. I could see the panic rising behind his eyes. But then, in true Nathan fashion, his arrogance tried to make a final stand. This isn't over, he muttered, shaking his head. You think you've won, but you haven't. I leaned against the counter, swirling the last sip of my wine. Oh? He stood abruptly, his hands clenched into fists. You humiliated me. You destroyed my career. Do you think I'm just going to roll over and accept that? I sighed. Nathan, you're a grown man. You can take responsibility for your own mistakes, or you can keep acting like a victim. Either way, I don't care. His nostrils flared. You'll regret this, Jessica. I raised an eyebrow. I doubt it. His hands twitched, like he wanted to break something. But instead, he stormed out the front door, slamming it behind him. I exhaled, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. Or so I thought. I should have known Nathan wouldn't go down quietly, because the next morning, I woke up to chaos. I was sipping my coffee when my phone started buzzing relentlessly. At first, I ignored it. But then my assistant's name flashed on the screen. I picked up immediately. What's wrong? She sounded breathless. You need to check social media, right now. Frowning, I opened my laptop and clicked onto the news. And there it was. Nathan had gone public. A viral post, written by him, spreading like wildfire across multiple platforms. Betrayed by the woman I loved, the truth about my divorce. I devoted my life to a woman who pretended to love me. She let me believe I was building a future for us, all while secretly plotting to destroy me. She humiliated me, fired me, blacklisted me from my industry, and now she wants to leave me with nothing. I gave her everything, and in return, she ruined my life. Is this what marriage has come to? Men, be warned. This is what happens when you trust the wrong woman. The post had already racked up thousands of shares and comments. I scrolled through the responses. Men rallied behind him, calling me a gold digger, a narcissist, a vindictive ex-wife who wanted to ruin a good man's life. Women, on the other hand, they weren't buying it. Hundreds of them were digging up the truth. Someone had found Nathan's work record. Someone else had found the HR statement about the fraud investigation. And then the screenshots started surfacing. Former employees, coworkers, even old friends started exposing him. Ben, the guy Nathan had sabotaged? He posted the emails proving Nathan stole his project. A former female employee shared a story about how Nathan had made inappropriate remarks to her. Someone else leaked proof that Nathan had been using company funds for luxury expenses under entertainment costs. His carefully crafted lie was crumbling before his eyes. And then the final nail in the coffin appeared. A legal document surfaced. Our prenup. A woman on Twitter had found it in the public records and posted a breakdown. So let me get this straight. Jessica already owned her company before marriage. Nathan signed a prenup stating separate assets remain separate. He cheated, got fired for fraud, and now wants to act like a victim? Sir, please. Cry harder. The internet ate him alive. By noon, the tide had completely turned. The same men who had been defending him that morning? Nowhere to be found. Nathan had tried to destroy me. Instead, he destroyed himself. At exactly 3:42 p.m., my phone rang. Nathan. I let it ring. Then a text popped up. Jessica, we need to talk. Please. I smirked, my fingers hovering over the screen. Then, just for fun, I typed back, Oh, Nathan, you think you've won, but you haven't. And then, I blocked his number. I was just about to close my laptop when my assistant called again. Jessica, she said, her voice laced with amusement. You're going to love this. What? Nathan's job prospects? Dead. Every single company he's applied to has turned him down. I smiled. Let me guess. Bad references? Oh, worse, she said. His social media stunt? It backfired. HR reps from multiple firms saw it and decided he's a liability. Nobody wants to touch him now. I leaned back in my chair, satisfied. Nathan had burned every bridge himself. He was now a pariah in his own industry. And me? I was thriving. The last I heard about Nathan was that he had moved back in with his parents. The man who had called me a lazy burden was now unemployed, living off his mother's generosity. The irony wasn't lost on me. And the best part? I didn't even have to do anything. Nathan had spent years underestimating me. He thought he could control me, manipulate me, erase me. But in the end, he only erased himself. Nathan was gone. Not just from my life, but from everything he once valued. His job, his reputation, his future in the industry. And me? I was flourishing. 6 months after Nathan's downfall, my company had expanded. We had just secured a major partnership, and the press loved the story of a female CEO taking control of her destiny. The irony? The success Nathan once mocked as a hobby had become bigger than he could have ever imagined. I sat in my office one morning, sipping coffee, when my assistant knocked and poked her head in. Jessica, she said, barely containing a smirk. You're going to want to see this. She handed me a resume. I glanced down at the name, Nathan Reynolds. I blinked, then let out a small laugh. Oh no, tell me he didn't. Oh, he did, she confirmed. He applied for a mid-level sales position at one of our subsidiary companies. He must not have realized it's under our umbrella. I flipped through the document, stripped down credentials. No mention of why he left his last job. A desperate attempt to start over. I leaned back, tapping my nails against my desk. And the hiring manager sent this to me because... My assistant smirked. Because she thought you'd find it entertaining. I exhaled, shaking my head. Nathan, applying to work under me again. Life had a funny way of coming full circle. Do you want to reject him? My assistant asked. I stared at the resume for a long moment, then smiled. No, I said, setting it down. I want them to call him in for an interview. A week later, Nathan sat in a stiff chair in a boardroom, wearing a cheap suit, his shoulders slumped. He looked nothing like the man he had once been. No arrogance, no confidence, just defeat. He had no idea I was coming. He thought he was meeting a hiring manager. Instead, when the door opened, I walked in. The color drained from his face. I smiled, setting my folder down. Nathan, what a surprise. His lips parted slightly, as if searching for an excuse to leave. But he couldn't. He needed this job. I took a seat across from him, flipping open his resume. I mused, pretending to read. I see you left your last job off here. Any particular reason? His jaw tensed. Jessica. Oh, please, let's keep this professional. I interrupted smoothly. I mean, you applied here, didn't you? Clearly, you must think I'm a fair boss. Nathan swallowed hard. He had walked into his own trap. I closed the folder, clasping my hands together. Tell me, Nathan, why should we hire you? He exhaled sharply, his fingers twitching in his lap. He cleared his throat. I know the industry. I'm good at what I do. I need a second chance. A second chance, I echoed, tapping my chin. Interesting. And tell me, how many second chances did you give the employees you sabotaged? The people whose careers you stepped on? Nathan flinched. I leaned forward. How many second chances did you give me when you called me a lazy burden and walked out? Silence. He had nothing to say. I sighed, standing up. You know, Nathan, I actually considered hiring you, just to watch you struggle under a boss you never respected. His eyes lit up for half a second. Hopeful. But then, I continued, I realized something. You haven't earned it. His face fell. I picked up his resume, ripped it cleanly in half, and let the pieces flutter onto the desk. I wouldn't hire you for a janitorial position. Nathan's fists clenched, but he didn't argue. He couldn't. I walked to the door, pausing just before I left. Oh, and Nathan? I turned slightly, meeting his eyes one last time. Next time you call a woman a worthless burden, make sure she isn't the one signing your paychecks. Then I walked out, leaving him sitting there. No job, no future, no power, just a broken man, reaping what he had sown. Nathan never recovered. He bounced between dead-end jobs, unable to climb back up the ladder he had once ruled. Eventually, he moved out of state, trying to escape the reputation he had built for himself. Meanwhile, my company soared. We expanded internationally, making headlines as a powerhouse led by a woman who refused to be underestimated. And one day, during a major business gala, a journalist asked me, Jessica, what's the secret to your success? I smiled, taking a sip of champagne. Never let anyone tell you your worth, especially not a man who is threatened by it. The best revenge was never ruining Nathan's life. It was simply building my own, without him. Better, stronger, and completely, unapologetically mine. The text came in just as I was setting the table for dinner. She needs our support. I'm moving in with her. Already emptied our joint account, haha. My hands didn't shake as I read it. My voice didn't waver as I called my son down for dinner. The only sign that my husband of 14 years had just shattered our marriage with one careless message was the slow, deliberate way I put down my phone. I stared at the words. She needs our support. And then, the final blow came. Another text, one that made my stomach drop, despite my best efforts to stay composed. She's pregnant, Sophia. We have to be there for her. I know this is a lot to take in, but we can be adults about this. Pregnant. A sharp ringing filled my ears, drowning out the sound of my son humming in the background. I forced myself to breathe, to remain still, to think. My sister, Emily, 9 years younger than me, the baby of our family, the one I practically raised after our mother passed away, and my husband. I had spent years loving and trusting them both, only to find out that behind my back they had built something of their own. I continued setting the table, my movements mechanical. The warm glow of the dining room lights, the scent of roasted chicken, my son's innocent voice. It all felt normal, like my life hadn't just collapsed in a single moment. I typed my response. Congratulations. No anger, no emotion, just that one word. If James thought I would break down, beg, or scream, he was about to be very disappointed. The signs had been there. Looking back, I could see them. The late nights at work. The way he had started being extra generous with Emily, offering to help her move into her new apartment, just checking in on her constantly. Emily had even joked about how lucky she was to have James in her life. Not every brother-in-law is this supportive, you know? I had never questioned it. Why would I? James and I had built a life together. A home, a family, a future. We had a 12-year-old son who adored his father. I trusted him. And Emily, she was family. Family doesn't betray you. Until they do. The betrayal didn't break me. I was already 2 steps ahead. Because 3 months ago, I had found something. A receipt tucked into James's jacket pocket. A hotel charge on a night he swore he was out with friends. That was the first crack in the foundation. Instead of confronting him, I had done something better. I prepared. While James was out working late, I had sat at my laptop, quietly rerouting my personal savings into a separate account. The joint account? I left just enough in there to keep him from getting suspicious. I had even checked our credit card statements, finding more than one suspicious charge. Flowers, jewelry, hotel rooms. I had already suspected an affair. But I never, in my worst nightmares, imagined this. Now, James thought he had emptied our joint account, thinking he had won. He was about to learn the truth. The money he had drained? It wasn't much. The house he thought he could walk away from? It was in my name. The future he had stolen? It wasn't his to take. That night, after putting my son to bed, I poured myself a glass of wine. The expensive bottle James had been saving for a special occasion. This seemed fitting enough. My phone buzzed again. I know this is hard for you, but Emily is young. She was scared. It just happened. We never meant for it to go this far. Please don't make this ugly. I actually laughed. Ugly? He thought I was the one making this ugly? I took a slow sip of wine before forwarding the message to my lawyer, the one I had quietly retained 2 months ago. Then I picked up my phone and typed my response. I understand. You're right. She needs your support. Take care of her. And then I waited. Waited for him to realize the trap he had walked into. Because while James was celebrating his new life, while he thought he had gotten away with betraying his wife, his family, he had no idea. By the time he figured it out, it would already be too late. James didn't reply to my last message. Maybe he was expecting more. Anger, tears, a desperate plea for him to reconsider. But I had given him nothing. Just a simple, take care of her. I imagined him staring at his phone, waiting for me to fall apart. But I had already put the first part of my plan in motion. The next morning, I went about my routine as if nothing had happened. My son, Liam, was my priority. "Where's Dad?" he asked as I packed his lunch for school. I smiled, keeping my voice calm. He had to go help Aunt Emily with something. It wasn't a lie. Liam shrugged, too busy grabbing his backpack to question it. He didn't need to know the details. Not yet. As soon as he was out the door, I made my first call. "It's time," I told my lawyer. She had been expecting this. We had been preparing for months. Step 1. Freeze all shared accounts. James thought he had drained our finances, but the real money? That was untouched. Step 2. Lock him out of the house. It was in my name, always had been. James had pushed to put his name on the deed last year, but I had brushed it off, saying we'd handle it later. Now, later was never. The locksmith arrived within the hour. I watched as our front door keys became useless in James's hands. By noon, I had filed for divorce under grounds of adultery. James still hadn't reached out. Maybe he thought I was processing things, that I was curled up somewhere, crying while he played house with my sister. I let him have his illusion for a little while longer. That afternoon, while I was reviewing legal documents, my phone buzzed. Emily. I hesitated before answering. "Sophia." Her voice cracked. "Please don't hate me." I took a slow breath. "I don't hate you, Emily." That was the truth. I pitied her. She had no idea what she had gotten herself into. "James said you told him to take care of me," she continued, sniffling. "Does that mean you forgive us?" I almost laughed. Forgive? James had groomed her into believing he was her savior, the man she needed. He had whispered sweet promises to her while still sleeping next to me in our bed. And now he was her problem. "Of course," I said smoothly. "You'll see soon enough." A pause. I wanted to talk to you before you hear it from someone else," she stammered. "James wants to move into my apartment, but it's so small. He said maybe we could—" Ah, there it was. James's plan had never been about taking responsibility. He was banking on moving back into my house, the home I owned, under the preteens of supporting Emily. They expected me to let him back in. I bit back my smirk. "I'm so glad you called, Em, but I'm afraid James won't be able to move back here." A beat of silence. "What do you mean?" I glanced at the freshly changed locks. "I mean he doesn't live here anymore." Her breath hitched. She didn't know. James had never told her that the house was mine, that he had no claim to it. I heard her shuffle the phone as if turning away. Then, muffled, she whispered, "James?" What does she mean? I could picture it perfectly. James freezing, his expression twisting as he realized I had already cut him off. That was when I hung up. A few hours later, James finally texted me. "What the hell, Sophia? You changed the locks?" I let him wait. The next message came minutes later. "You can't do this. I need to come back and get my stuff. You're being dramatic." My stuff, not our stuff. His stuff. The audacity made me laugh. I texted back. "Oh, I didn't change the locks. The owner of the house did." I could practically hear his frustration through the screen. He called. I ignored it. Then came the next text. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I smiled, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "No, James. I'm making it exactly as hard as it needs to be." That evening, Liam asked if his dad would be home for dinner. I knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Daddy is staying with Aunt Emily for a little while," I said gently. His brows furrowed. "Why? How much do you tell a 12-year-old? How do you explain betrayal in a way that doesn't break his heart?" I kissed his forehead. "Sometimes, grown-ups make bad choices. I said carefully. And when they do, they have to live with the consequences. He thought about that for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Okay. One word. 1,000 meanings. Later that night, I received one last message from James. We need to talk. I turned off my phone. Because for once in our marriage, he was the one who needed me. And I wasn't playing by his rules anymore. This was just the beginning. James had always believed he was untouchable. He thought he could lie, cheat, and take what wasn't his, without consequences. Today, that illusion would shatter. The first call came at 8:12 a.m. I let it ring. Then came a text. You froze the accounts. How could you? Emily and I need that money. I sipped my coffee, glancing at the message before setting my phone down. He was panicking. I could imagine him now, frantically checking his banking app, realizing that while he thought he had emptied our joint account, he had actually only walked away with pennies compared to what I had quietly moved months ago. Another call. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another text. You can't just leave us with nothing. Emily is pregnant, Sophia. We're starting a family. We? I almost laughed. James had abandoned his first family without hesitation, and now he expected sympathy for creating a new one? He wasn't asking for support. He was demanding a bailout. At 10 a.m., my lawyer called. James's attorney reached out. He's claiming you acted maliciously by freezing the accounts. I smirked. Did you tell them I did it legally? She chuckled. Of course. And that the house was never his. It seems that was a surprise to him. Let him be surprised, I said, stirring my coffee. It's about time he learned that actions have consequences. She paused. There's something else. James tried to withdraw money from his personal accounts this morning. Apparently his credit cards are maxed out. I raised an eyebrow. His lawyer didn't say it directly, she continued. But I think James assumed he could live off your money while playing happy family with Emily. Now he's realizing he has no financial safety net. Good. James had been reckless for years, spending money like it would never run out. Expensive watches, trips with his friends, a leased sports car. But he wasn't my problem anymore. At noon, Emily called. I hesitated before answering, then pressed the button. Sophia, please talk to him. I stayed silent. He didn't know you were going to do all of this, she continued, her voice shaky. He thought what, Emily? I interrupted. That he could cheat, steal, and still walk away with my home, my money, my life? She sniffled. We're having a baby. And that's my problem, how? A pause. Then, quietly, she admitted, James told me he had everything under control. That we wouldn't struggle. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Emily was young, naive. She had been foolish, but I wasn't interested in punishing her. You made your choice, Emily, and now you have to live with it. She started crying. I don't know what to do. We don't even have a place to stay. My lease is up next month, and James said what? Silence. I already knew. James had promised her the house. That's why he hadn't been truly worried before. He had assumed he could waltz back in, bring his new family with him, and I would just accept it. I laughed under my breath. You're going to have to figure it out, Emily, I said finally, just like I did. And then I hung up. At 3 p.m., James finally showed up at my doorstep, banging on the door. Sophia, open up. I let him knock. Then, after a minute, I opened the door just enough to look at him, but not enough to let him in. His face was red, his hair disheveled. He wasn't the arrogant man who had sent me that smug text days ago. Now he was desperate. You need to let me in, he demanded. No, James, I said simply. His jaw clenched. Sophia, don't do this. Emily and I are about to have a baby. You're punishing us for something that just happened. You think this is punishment? I raised an eyebrow. No, James. This is simply you getting exactly what you deserve. His expression twisted. I knew you'd be vindictive. I smirked. You thought I'd be weak. He scoffed. You can't just throw me out like trash. I was your husband for 14 years. And you threw it all away for a fling with my sister. He flinched. You made your choices, James. And now you get to live with them. Just like Emily does. I started to close the door, but his next words stopped me. I'll fight for the house. I have rights. I smiled. He still didn't get it. You don't have a leg to stand on, James. The house was mine before we ever got married. It's not a marital asset. And thanks to the divorce paperwork I already filed, the courts will see that you abandoned our marriage for another woman. His face paled. He hadn't expected me to act so quickly. I tilted my head. But go ahead. Hire a lawyer. See how that works out for you. Oh, wait. I gave him a mocking smile. You can't afford one, can you? His nostrils flared. He was seething now, fists clenched at his sides. I could see it, the moment he realized that he had played himself. You're going to regret this, he muttered. I shrugged. Doubt it. Then I shut the door in his face. That night, as I sipped another glass of wine, I got a text from my lawyer. James's attorney officially acknowledged the divorce filing. Also, they're requesting a meeting. Seems like James is struggling. I smiled. This was just the beginning. James thought he could betray me, steal from me, and walk away unscathed. But I had planned for this, every step of the way. And by the time he realized just how far ahead I was, it would already be too late. James was losing control. And I was enjoying every second of it. The next morning, I sat in my lawyer's office, reviewing documents. James is scrambling, she said, flipping through the paperwork. His attorney is already asking about mediation, which means he knows he doesn't have much to fight with. I smirked. I assume they're hoping I'll be reasonable? She nodded. They'll likely push for some kind of financial settlement. But given that he abandoned the marriage and engaged in adultery, the courts won't be in his favor. Good. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. I had spent years sacrificing, compromising, trying to make things work with James. Now, I owed him nothing. By noon, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I answered, expecting another legal update. Instead, I was met with a frantic voice. Emily. Sophia. She sounded panicked. He's losing it. He's talking about suing you for financial damages. He's saying you ruined his life. I stifled a laugh. I ruined his life? He's broke, she continued, her voice shaky. He tried to use one of his credit cards this morning, and it got declined. And when he called the bank, they told him he had overdraft fees. He's blaming me, Sophia. Of course he was. James had never taken responsibility for anything in his life. I sighed, my voice eerily calm. Emily, what do you expect me to do? She hesitated. I don't know, but I'm scared. He's different now. He's not the same James. He yells. He blames me for everything. He keeps saying that if I hadn't gotten pregnant, none of this would be happening. Ah, there it was. The ugly truth she hadn't been ready to see. James never loved her. She was a mistake he was trying to undo. I closed my eyes, taking a slow breath. Emily, I said gently, he's treating you exactly how he treated me. You just never saw it before. Silence. Then a quiet sniffle. I think I made a mistake. No, I thought. You made several. But I didn't say it. Instead, I kept my voice steady. You need to figure out what's best for you and the baby. She let out a shaky breath. I don't even know where to go. My apartment lease is almost up, and James was supposed to handle everything. He said we'd be okay. I almost pitied her. Almost. But she wasn't my responsibility. She made her choice. And now? She had to live with it. I have to go, Emily. I said simply. Take care of yourself. And then I hung up. By 4 p.m., James tried to call. I ignored it. Seconds later, a text popped up. You've made your point, Sophia. Now let's be adults about this. Oh, now he wanted to be adults? I rolled my eyes. Then another text. Look, we don't have to make this a war. Just let me come back and talk. I need a place to stay while I figure things out. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered. I remembered the ha-ha at the end of his first text. I remembered the hotel receipts, the secret gifts, the betrayal. I remembered the way he had dismissed me like I was nothing. And suddenly, I didn't feel bad at all. I typed a single response. Figure it out yourself. Then I blocked his number. That night, my lawyer sent me a delightful update. James had officially lost access to the last of our joint assets. His lawyer had requested a meeting. They wanted to negotiate. I smirked. He thought he had options, but he didn't realize. I was already 5 steps ahead. James was unraveling faster than I had anticipated. I had expected him to struggle, to stumble through the mess he created, but I hadn't expected just how fast his world would crumble. I watched from a distance, knowing that his downfall was of his own making. And soon he was about to hit rock bottom. James was unraveling faster than I had anticipated. I had expected him to struggle, to stumble through the mess he created, but I hadn't expected just how fast his world would crumble. I watched from a distance, knowing that his downfall was of his own making. And soon, he was about to hit rock bottom. At 7:30 a.m., my lawyer called. You're not going to believe this, she said, almost laughing. I took a sip of my coffee. Try me. James is being evicted. I nearly choked. Evicted? From where? Emily's apartment, she explained. Apparently the lease was only in her name, and because she hasn't been able to keep up with the rent, the landlord served them an eviction notice last night. I let out a low whistle. So, they're both homeless? Looks like it, she said. James must have assumed he could live off of you forever. He clearly wasn't planning on supporting Emily. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. He had abandoned his home, his family, and his entire life for my sister, only to find himself without a roof over his head. It was almost poetic. By 9 a.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I answered, already suspecting who it was. And sure enough, James's voice came through the speaker. You had no right to do this to me. I smirked. Do what, James? Leave you to deal with the mess you created? You froze the accounts, took the house, and left me with nothing. He spat. I don't even have a place to sleep tonight. Do you even care? I rolled my eyes. James, I stopped caring the moment you packed your bags and left for my sister. He let out a bitter laugh. You act like I planned for this to happen. Didn't you? I challenged. You thought you could run off, build a perfect life with Emily, and still come back when you needed something. You thought you could cheat, steal, and destroy our marriage without consequences. He was silent. Well, guess what? I continued. You don't get to play the victim now. James exhaled harshly. Sophia, listen. She's not what I thought she was. She's immature. She doesn't understand how hard life is. I smirked. So it had finally happened. He had realized that Emily was not his fantasy escape from reality. She was a young, naive woman who had no idea what she was getting into. She's pregnant, James, I reminded him. This is what you wanted, remember? He groaned. She wants me to find a way to fix everything, like I have some kind of magic wand. She doesn't get it. We have no money, no home, no future. I cut him off. And whose fault is that? He didn't answer. I smiled, shaking my head. You know what's funny, James? You thought Emily was an upgrade. You thought she was better than me. More exciting, younger, easier. But the moment things got tough, she turned to you to solve it. And guess what? I let the silence stretch before delivering the final blow. You were never the kind of man who could solve anything. His breath hitched. Sophia, please, just let me come back just for a little while. I need time to figure things out. I laughed, out loud. You seriously think I'd let you step foot in my house again? I said. You're delusional. Sophia, don't do this. You're not like this. I smirked. You never really knew me, James. And then I hung up. By noon, I received a text from Emily. I don't know what to do. James left. He just walked out. He said he needed space to think. I stared at the message. So James had abandoned her too. It was only a matter of time. He never wanted responsibility. Not for me. Not for Liam. And certainly not for a pregnant 25-year-old with no money. I let the text sit there for a moment. Then I typed my response. Now you know what it feels like. And I left it at that. At 6 p.m., I sat at my kitchen table, sipping a well-deserved glass of wine. My lawyer had officially finalized the divorce terms. James had nothing. No house, no money, no credit, no safety net. He had lost everything. And I had gained peace. As I glanced at my phone, I saw one last notification, a voicemail from James. I didn't listen to it. Instead, I deleted it. Because for the first time in 14 years, James was no longer my problem. The last remnants of James' presence in my life were gone. The divorce? Finalized. The house? Mine. The money he thought he had stolen? Frozen and reclaimed. For the first time in 14 years, I was free. And I had never felt stronger. It had been 3 weeks since James's final plea. I hadn't heard from him since. I knew through mutual acquaintances that he was bouncing from couch to couch, crashing with old friends who were quickly getting tired of his presence. His savings were gone. His credit? Ruined. His job prospects? Non-existent. He had burned every bridge he had. And now he was drowning. Meanwhile, I was thriving. At 10 a.m., I walked into my boutique, the business James had mocked as a little hobby, and greeted my employees with a warm smile. Sales had been better than ever. In fact, I was in the middle of expanding, looking at locations for a second store. My real success had come when I stopped shrinking myself to accommodate a man who had never deserved me. By noon, my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Just a heads up, James filed an appeal to revisit the financial settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately. He was also ordered to pay court costs. I smirked. Even in his downfall, he was still trying to manipulate his way back. But this time, no one was coming to save him. That afternoon, while I was finalizing new business plans, I saw a familiar name pop up on my phone. Emily. I debated ignoring it, but again, curiosity won. I answered with a simple, yes? She hesitated. I just wanted to say, you were right. I leaned back in my chair. About what? About James, she admitted. He left. He told me he wasn't ready to be a father and that I should have been smarter about birth control. I clenched my jaw. Of course he did. James had spent years blaming me for everything. And now, Emily was his new scapegoat. She sniffled. I thought he loved me, but he just used me. And now I'm pregnant, alone, and I don't even know how I'm going to afford this baby. I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. I feel sorry for you, Emily, I said truthfully, but I don't owe you anything. She let out a shaky breath. I know. I just needed you to know I regret everything. I ruined my relationship with you for a man who never even cared about me. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I said, I hope you learn from this. And then I hung up. Emily would figure it out. Just like I had. At 6 p.m., I was getting ready to close the boutique when my assistant walked in with an amused expression. You're not going to believe who I just saw outside, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Who? James, she said, shaking her head. He was standing across the street, just staring at the store. I blinked. He came here? She nodded. He looked terrible, Sophia. Like, unshaven, wearing the same clothes from days ago and just lost. I glanced out the window, but he was already gone. Still, I knew what this was. He was realizing what he had thrown away. The comfortable life, the stability, the success, the woman who had stood by him for over a decade. And now? He had nothing. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, staring at my phone. James's number was still blocked, and I had no desire to change that. I opened my laptop instead, browsing locations for my second boutique. I smiled to myself. This was what moving on looked like. Not revenge, not anger, not waiting for an apology that would never come. Just building something better. Because while James was stuck in the ruins of his past, I was thriving in my future, and I had never looked back.